Now, psychologists working with refugees and migrants on the Greek island of Lesbos have told the BBC that they are seeing an increasing number of children who are self-harming and even attempting suicide. Well, there's been a spike in refugees arriving on the Aegean Islands in the last few months, and the vast majority are, of course, fleeing countries of conflict. Almost 18,000 people are now living at the Mouria camp in Lesbos, which was made for only 2,000. Our global health correspondent Tulip Mazumdar reports from there. You may find some of the details upsetting.
This is no place for a child. And yet Mouria camp is home to more than 7,000 of them. The vast majority of these children have fled war-torn countries and arrived here in Europe, a place, supposedly, of humanity, safety and security.
Okay, let's go together.
At the nearby children's clinic, a mental health emergency is unfolding. A 17-year-old boy slashed himself across his chest and arms overnight. His friend has brought him in.
But just ask him if we can talk to him.
This is a sadly common scene here.
He's not well. He does want to, he talks about wanting to do this again.
More than 150 children have been referred to MSF psychologists in the last 2 months alone. That's double the number from the summer. 2 of those children attempted suicide. The youngest was just 13 years old.
Normally a child, when experiences something traumatic, has to have the time and the space to recover. Mouria does not allow children to recover. In a child in the preschooler age, you can see children banging their head against a wall, for instance, pulling their hair off. And in the age more between 12 and 17, we see children start to cut themselves, strongly start to talk about the desire of dying.
A father in desperate search of help for his family. His daughter Zainab has autism and epilepsy. It took them 2 months to get here from Afghanistan. They met us at a makeshift community centre at the camp. He described how they all almost died when they were flung into the sea as they crossed from Turkey. Their bag with their money and Zainab's medication was lost.
The children were just screaming. They had so much fear. And the darkness. We always remember the darkness.
Both children, he tells me, are utterly traumatized.
At night, Zainab screams. She doesn't sleep. She hardly eats.
We were refused permission to film inside the main government-run part of the camp, but the overspill into the neighbouring olive grove now holds around half of the almost 18,000 population of Mouria. Some families are getting stuck here for months, awaiting news on their asylum claims. The Greek government recently announced plans to move 20,000 people off this island and neighbouring islands by early 2020, but movement on that has been extremely slow, and people, particularly women and children, keep arriving on these islands every week. More than 1,000 children in these camps are travelling alone. Most are teenagers. This 15-year-old boy, who we're not identifying, is staying in a shipping container with 20 other unaccompanied boys.
I have came from Afghanistan here to feel myself in a safe place, but I think it's not a safe place. It's really dangerous. I'm thinking about everything, what will happen to me, what I'm going to do in here. After this, what will come.
The teenager is being helped by this legal charity. They work with some of the most vulnerable people in Mouria.
So I'd say between 700 and 800 kids that are sleeping outside the sections. They're sleeping on the streets, in the beach, in a park in the middle of town where they say there's a prostitution network, in the mosque with other adults in the tents because they don't have tents, so they choose to share with adults.
Children are resilient.
My name is Mustafa.
Here, in a tented shack which is used as a community centre, staff are trying to help them remember, simply how to be children.
My name is Nargis.
There are art classes too. Zakria, himself a refugee, helps to run this facility.
They learn something. They become busy here. They came here for 2 hours, 3 hours, and they play, coloring, drawing, and it has brought lots of impacts and lots of happiness for them.
Another precious place of solace. These children are learning to play the guitar. A dim glow of hope in these dark times. Tulip Mazumdar, BBC News, Moria camp in Lesbos.
Well, the UN Secretary-General has opened a global summit on refugees, calling for bold action to help the tens of millions of people forced to flee their homes due to war or persecution. Speaking at the Geneva Forum, Antonio Guterres praised the generosity of poorer countries who host most of the world's refugees, but said the international community must do more to share responsibility.
At a time when the right to asylum is under assault, when so many borders and doors are being closed to refugees, when even child refugees can be divided from their families, we need to reaffirm the human rights of refugees. And the Global Compact on Refugees gives us the blueprint.